Hello guys, and welcome back. In tonight's episode, we're stepping straight into the glittering, absurd, and sometimes downright disturbing world of the Gilded Age, a time when America's richest men threw dinner parties that cost more than an average worker earned in 15 years. Sometimes they even held those parties on horseback, just because they could. Before we dive in, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I always find it crazy that while I'm recording late at night here in the States, some of you are already having breakfast in London or winding down in Sydney. And if you enjoy these long, immersive dives into history, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps the channel a ton, and it means I can keep making these stories for you. In 1890s New York, Gilded Age millionaires spent more on a single dinner party than an average worker earned in 15 years. Sometimes they'd even host those lavish affairs on horseback, just because they could. Before we begin, a quick note. If you're a regular listener, please like or subscribe. I'm always curious to know where you all are, so comment with your city and time zone. It's wild to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I record this late at night in the States. Tonight, we're diving into the Gilded Age. But first, get comfortable, and I mean really comfortable. Adjust your pillows, pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you'll want to be cozy for what comes next. Your eyes snap open in darkness. Panic grips you for a moment as you realize you're not in your familiar bed. The mattress beneath you feels too perfect, too plush. The sheets are an impossibly smooth, cool silk, not your usual cotton. As your eyes adjust, the gloom reveals an enormous bedroom with a ceiling that disappears into shadow. This isn't your bedroom. This isn't even your sentry. The air is stale, tainted with cold smoke from outside. Next, you notice the weight of the covers. Not one, but 6 heavy silk quilts and a fur throw that would have cost a year's wages for most people in 1895. You're in a mahogany 4-poster bed so vast it could fit 8 people, with a silk canopy and hand-embroidered curtains that probably cost a seamstress her eyesight to complete. This bed alone would bankrupt most families, yet for you, it's just where you sleep. Unlike your temperature-controlled modern bedroom, this massive chamber is chilly, despite a dying fire in the marble fireplace. Insulation wasn't a priority when you had servants to stoke your fires all night. And speaking of servants, a soft knock at the door makes your heart race. "Enter," you call out, your voice sounding strange to your own ears. The door swings open, and a man in a crisp uniform steps inside. He's in his 50s, impeccably dressed in black and white, his posture military straight. Behind him, 4 younger men in similar uniforms follow, each carrying silver trays. "Good morning, sir," the older man says, his tone respectful but not servile. "It's 7:15. I trust you slept well." This, you realize with a start, is your valet. Not just any servant, but your personal manservant, who probably knows more about your daily habits than your own wife. Unlike your quick shower and coffee morning routine, you're about to experience how the 1% of the 1% started their day in the Gilded Age. "Shall I open the curtains, sir?" he asks, already striding toward the massive windows. He pulls a cord, and the heavy velvet drapes mechanically part, revealing a grey New York morning. Fifth Avenue stretches below, already bustling with carriages and delivery wagons. "Jesus," you mutter, taking in the view of Central Park across the street. Yes, thank you." The valet doesn't react. He's used to rich men being eccentric. He probably thinks you're nursing a hangover from some exclusive club. "Your morning coffee, sir," he says, nodding to a younger servant who steps forward with a silver tray. It holds a single cup of coffee in a hand-painted Sèvres porcelain cup that costs more than most people's monthly rent. You sit up, accepting the coffee. It's strong but laced with cream and sugar. Apparently, your Gilded Age self has a sweet tooth. "Richardson," you say, the name coming to you from nowhere. "What's the schedule today?" The valet, Richardson, doesn't miss a beat. You have a breakfast meeting with Mr. Morgan and Mr. Carnegie at 9:30 in your private dining car. Your train departs Grand Central Depot at 9 sharp. This afternoon, Mrs. Astor's weekly reception at 3, which Mrs. Vanderbilt insisted you attend. Dinner this evening at Delmonico's with the governor and several gentlemen from the Railroad Commission. Jesus Christ. You have a private dining car, an entire railroad car just for eating breakfast. While you process this, Richardson directs the other servants. One opens a set of double doors, revealing a bathroom larger than your entire apartment back home. Inside, a clawfoot tub the size of a small boat is already filled with steaming water, rose petals floating on the surface. The brass fixtures aren't brass, they're solid gold. The sink basin appears to be carved from a single piece of marble. "Shall we proceed with your bath, sir?" Richardson asks. You nod, because what else can you do? 2 servants step forward to help you out of your silk pyjamas. This is apparently normal, being dressed and undressed like a life-sized doll. The concept of privacy, as you know it, doesn't exist for the ultra-wealthy of the Gilded Age. Your body is just another possession to be maintained by staff. "Wait," you say, suddenly uncomfortable with the idea of multiple grown men watching you bathe. I can manage the bath myself this morning." Richardson's eyebrow twitches, the servant equivalent of a dramatic gasp. "As you wish, sir. Most unusual. But we shall wait in the dressing room. Ring when you're ready to be dried and dressed." The servants withdraw, leaving you alone in the palatial bathroom. Unlike your quick morning shower, bathing in 1895 is a production. The water is scented with imported oils. Beside the tub sits an array of soaps, each in its own silver dish. French milled, English lavender, Italian olive oil. The international array of cleansing products is dizzying. You slip into the bath, and for a moment, the luxury is overwhelming. The water is perfectly heated, a luxury few could afford in an era when every drop of hot water required someone to haul fuel and tend a fire. As you soak, you notice something disturbing on your hands. Dirt under your manicured nails. Not just any dirt, coal dust. The evidence of your empire, perhaps. You scrub it away, wondering what kind of industrial baron you've become. Steel? Railroads? Oil? Banking? Whatever it is, you're clearly at the top of the heap in an age when the richest 1% owned more wealth than the bottom 99% combined. The bathroom door cracks open. "Sir," Richardson's voice floats in. "The time—" "Yes, coming," you say, suddenly aware that you've spent 10 precious minutes just sitting in water, an incredible luxury when servants measure their workday by the clock. You step out of the tub and immediately a servant appears with a warm towel, another with a terry cloth robe. Embarrassment floods you as they efficiently dry your body, but you fight it down. This is normal for them, expected. They probably find it strange that you tried to bathe alone. "Would Sir prefer the grey worsted wool suit or the navy pinstripe for the meeting with Mr. Morgan?" Richardson asks, leading you into a dressing room larger than most people's entire homes. The walls are lined with custom-built mahogany cabinets, displaying more clothing than you've owned in your entire life. Dozens of suits, hundreds of shirts, rows of shoes, each on its own wooden tree. An entire cabinet just for cufflinks and tie pins, many glittering with diamonds and precious stones. "The Navy," you say, because it seems like a safe choice for meeting robber barons. What follows is a 20-minute production of getting you dressed. First, the underwear, not boxers or briefs, but a full-body, one-piece cotton union suit that buttons up the front, then wool socks held up by garters, a crisp white shirt with a detachable collar and cuffs, a silk tie precisely knotted, a waistcoat, what you'd call a vest, with pearl buttons, and finally the suit jacket itself. "Your watch, sir," Richardson says, presenting a solid gold pocket watch on a chain. You examine it, a Patek Philippe, with your monogram engraved on the case, probably worth the equivalent of a modern luxury car. While you're being dressed, another servant enters. "Mr. Vanderbilt Hughes, your breakfast is served in the morning room." Your stomach growls on cue. The smell of bacon, eggs, fresh bread and coffee wafts up from downstairs. Unlike your rushed modern breakfast, maybe a granola bar or a quick bowl of cereal, breakfast in the Gilded Age is a serious meal. "I'll be down momentarily," you say, trying to sound authoritative. Richardson gives a final adjustment to your clothing, brushing invisible dust from your shoulders, straightening your already perfect tie. "Will there be anything else, sir?" You look around the opulent dressing room at the army of servants waiting to fulfill your every whim, at the wealth on display in just your morning routine. No, that will be all. Thank you. The servants nod and withdraw, leaving you alone for the first time since you woke up. You catch sight of yourself in a full-length mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. Perfectly groomed, impeccably dressed in clothing that cost more than most people make in months. You look every inch the Gilded Age billionaire, and it's only 8 in the morning. Grand Central. You make your way out of the bedroom suite and into a hallway lined with oil paintings in ornate gold frames. The carpet beneath your feet is so thick and plush you can barely hear your own footsteps. A grand staircase curves down to the main floor, the banister gleaming mahogany polished by servants' hands. 2 housemaids curtsy as you pass. A footman stands at attention near the bottom of the stairs. The house feels like a luxury hotel, except it's all yours, or at least it belongs to whatever version of you woke up in 1895. The morning room is flooded with light from tall windows. The table, which could seat 12 comfortably, is set for one with fine china, crystal, and sterling silver flatware. A butler stands by, ready to serve you. "Good morning, sir," he says, pulling out your chair. You sit down, somewhat dazed by the extravagance. The table before you bears enough food for a small family. Steak, eggs, bacon, sausages, toast, muffins, fruit, coffee and tea. Apparently, breakfast in the Gilded Age is a feast. "The morning paper, sir," the butler says, presenting you with the New York Times on a silver tray. The headline catches your eye. Workers strike at steel mill. Violence erupts as Pinkertons called in. With a sinking feeling, you wonder if it's your steel mill they're talking about. As you unfold the paper, another headline jumps out. Vanderbilt Hughes consolidates railroad holdings. Competitors cry monopoly. That's when it fully hits you. In this world, you're not just wealthy, you're one of them. The notorious robber barons. The men who built America's industrial might on the backs of desperate workers. The name schoolchildren would learn about a century later with a mixture of awe and distaste. The butler coughs discreetly. "Sir, Mr. Richardson asked me to remind you that your carriage will be ready in 20 minutes for your journey to Grand Central." You nod, suddenly not very hungry despite the feast. "Thank you. Will you be requiring anything else, sir?" You look around at the opulent room, the abundance of food, the servants waiting to fulfill your every whim. Outside these walls, people are literally fighting and dying in your name, or against it. "No," you say quietly, "that will be all. You're going to meet J.P. Morgan and Andrew Carnegie for breakfast in your private railroad car, and somehow you need to figure out how to navigate this world of extreme wealth and privilege, where your every comfort comes at someone else's expense." The butler withdraws, leaving you alone with your thoughts and the morning paper. You take a sip of coffee from a cup that probably costs as much as a factory worker makes in a month. Welcome to the Gilded Age. You've woken up as one of the richest men in America. The day has barely begun, and already you're learning that all that glitters is not gold. The Golden Prison. You step outside your Fifth Avenue mansion into the crisp morning air. The noise hits you first. Horses' hooves on cobblestones, carriage wheels grinding, street vendors shouting. The smell follows. Horse manure mixed with coal smoke. A combination that defines city living in 1895. Your carriage waits at the bottom of the limestone steps. Not just any carriage. A gleaming black Brewster Landau with your monogram emblazoned on the door, pulled by 4 matched bay horses that probably cost more than most families make in 5 years. 2 footmen in forest green livery snap to attention as you approach. "Good morning, Mr. Vanderbilt Hughes," one says, opening the door with a white-gloved hand. Inside, the carriage is upholstered in butter-soft Moroccan leather. The windows are beveled crystal glass. A small cabinet reveals decanters of brandy and whiskey. Apparently, morning drinking is just another perk of being obscenely rich in the Gilded Age. As you settle into the plush seat, a thought hits you. You own people. Not literally. Slavery's been over for 30 years, but practically. The coachmen, the footmen, The dozen house servants you've already encountered this morning, the hundreds of others working in your factories and offices and mines, they depend on you for their survival in an era with no social safety net, no unemployment benefits, no health care. If you fire someone, their kids might starve. If you cut wages, families get evicted. If you ignore safety concerns in your factories, workers die. And from the newspaper headlines, it seems your workers are currently striking against conditions you've imposed. Your stomach churns as the carriage lurches forward, joining the busy morning traffic headed downtown. Through the window, you see New York in all its Gilded Age contradictions. Ladies in rich gowns stepping carefully over mud puddles, immigrant children in rags selling newspapers on corners, construction everywhere. "Look at that poor bastard," the coachman calls down to the footman, not realizing you can hear him. "Crushed his leg at the rail yard yesterday. Company just tossed him out without a penny. That's why I'd never work for Vanderbilt Hughes Rail. That son of a bitch would work us to death for an extra $1 in his pocket." The footman makes a shushing sound, nodding discreetly toward the carriage. Your blood runs cold. That's who you are here. That's your legacy. The traffic slows, and a beggar approaches the carriage, a man missing an arm, his face gaunt with hunger. "Spare something for a veteran, sir," he calls, his voice raspy. Before you can respond, one of your footmen jumps down and roughly shoves the man away. "Get back. You, Mr. Vanderbilt Hughes, doesn't concern himself with your kind." "Please," you call out, surprising yourself. "Give him this." You reach into your pocket and find a gold coin. An eagle, $10, a week's wages for many workers. The footman looks shocked but does as instructed, handing the coin to the stunned beggar. "God bless you, sir," the man calls as your carriage pulls away. The footman resumes his position, clearly confused by your uncharacteristic generosity. You realize you've broken character. The real Vanderbilt Hughes apparently isn't known for random acts of kindness. The carriage turns onto 42nd Street, and Grand Central Depot comes into view. Your carriage bypasses the main entrance, continuing around to a private gate, where 2 uniformed guards snap to attention. "Mr. Vanderbilt Hughes," one says, opening the gate to a private driveway that leads directly to the train platforms. Wealth in the Gilded Age means never having to mingle with the common folk. Your carriage stops beside a train platform where a single railroad car sits, gleaming in the morning light. It's not connected to any train, just waiting for you. "Holy sh..." you mutter under your breath. This isn't just a private rail car, it's a palace on wheels. 60 feet long, painted a deep burgundy with gold leaf trim and your monogram emblazoned on the side. A uniformed porter stands at attention on the small platform at the rear of the car. "Good morning, Mr. Vanderbilt Hughes," the porter says, opening the door for you. "Mr. Morgan has arrived and is waiting inside. Mr. Carnegie sends his apologies. He's running a few minutes behind." You nod, trying to act like this is all completely normal, and step into another world. The interior of the rail car makes first-class airplane cabins look like cattle cars. The floors are covered in Persian carpet so thick your feet sink into them. The walls are panelled in hand-carved mahogany, polished to a mirror shine. Crystal chandeliers hang from a ceiling painted with classical scenes. The main salon features plush velvet armchairs and sofas arranged around small tables. A fireplace, an actual working fireplace on a moving train, occupies one wall. At the far end, a dining table is set for breakfast with fine china, crystal, and sterling silver. And there, standing by one of the windows with a glass of whiskey already in hand despite the early hour, is J.P. Morgan himself. "Vanderbilt Hughes," he says, not bothering with the first name or pleasantries. "You're late. It's 8:50 a.m. "Traffic," you say simply, figuring brevity is safer when you have no idea what your relationship with this titan of finance might be. Morgan grunts, draining his whiskey. "Help yourself," he says, gesturing to a sideboard laden with decanters. Carnegie's train was delayed. Something about a workers' demonstration on the tracks. Damn nuisance. "Quite." You pour yourself a small whiskey, mostly for show. "I've been looking at those reports you sent over," Morgan continues, fixing you with a stare so intense you have to force yourself not to look away. The Western expansion numbers are solid, but this business with the strikes... He trails off, raising a bushy eyebrow. You scramble for a response. "Yes. Well, labour troubles are an unfortunate reality these days. Morgan snorts. Fisk would have had those men shot and replaced by now. Jim Fisk, another railroad tycoon, notorious for his ruthlessness. Your apparent peer group is a rogues gallery of the most cutthroat capitalists in American history. I have my own methods, you say carefully. Indeed you do, Morgan says, a hint of grudging respect in his tone. Your handling of the Burlington situation was impressive. Cold-blooded, but effective. Didn't think you had it in you. Before you can figure out what terrible thing you supposedly did to the Burlington Railroad, the door opens, and in walks Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate. "Gentlemen," Carnegie booms, surprisingly jovial. "Apologies for the delay. Some ungrateful workers decided to lie down on the tracks. Can you imagine? As if I don't pay them a perfectly adequate $3 a day to work only 12 hours in my mills. $3 for 12 hours of dangerous labour in a steel mill. You do the quick math. 25 cents an hour in blistering heat, surrounded by molten metal." Morgan and Carnegie both laugh, clearly expecting you to join in. You manage a weak smile. A soft knock at the door, and the porter enters. "Gentlemen, breakfast is served, and the engineer informs me we'll be departing momentarily." You hadn't even noticed the train starting to move. The ride is so smooth. The three of you move to the dining table. "Now then," Morgan says, unfolding his napkin, "to business. The three of us control enough railroad stock to effectively set national freight rates. I propose we use that leverage. And just like that, you're participating in what is almost certainly an illegal conspiracy to fix prices across an entire industry. A conspiracy that will raise costs for farmers shipping crops, for factories shipping goods, costs that will ultimately be passed down to regular people. The Interstate Commerce Act specifically forbids pooling arrangements, you say, recalling a dim fact from a long-ago history class. Morgan and Carnegie stare at you like you've grown a second head. "Since when do you care about government regulations?" Carnegie asks, genuine confusion in his voice. "Did your wife make you go to church yesterday?" He laughs at his own joke. Morgan is less amused. The Interstate Commerce Commission is a paper tiger. Half the commissioners are former railroad men who will be looking for jobs with us when their terms end. They understand how business works. In other words, regulatory capture, the practice of industry controlling the very government bodies meant to oversee them, a problem that still exists in your own time. But here, in the Gilded Age, it's not even hidden. It's just how business is done. "Of course," you say quickly. "I merely thought it worth mentioning the legal considerations." Morgan snorts. "Legal considerations didn't stop you from bribing that entire state legislature last year. What was it you called it? An investment in governmental relations?" Jesus Christ! Apparently you're not just a ruthless businessman, but an outright criminal in this timeline. "Now then," Carnegie says, spreading caviar on toast with the casual air of a man who's forgotten that fish eggs are a luxury. "I've been thinking about your offer for the Pittsburgh Central line. I'm inclined to accept, with certain conditions." You have no idea what offer he's talking about, but you nod as if you do. "I thought you might be." $15 million, not 12, Carnegie says. "And I want guaranteed shipping rates for my steel for the next decade." $15 million in 1895 money is around $500 million in modern currency, and you're apparently negotiating this massive deal over breakfast. Morgan interjects. "What about the unions? Central's workers are organized. Will you handle that mess, or is Vanderbilt Hughes taking it on?" Carnegie waves a hand dismissively. "I've dealt with unions before." His face darkens, and you recall with a chill that this seemingly jovial man was responsible for the Homestead strike, where Pinkerton detectives and striking workers engaged in a gunfight that left 16 people dead. "My men can sort it out," you say vaguely. The train curves gently, and through the windows you see the Hudson River glittering in the morning sun. "Splendid," Carnegie says. "Now, what about our friend Huntington and his troublesome Southern Pacific? I heard rumours he's been meeting with your competitors." "Collis Huntington is not a concern," you say, trying to sound confident. Morgan fixes you with that unnerving stare again. "He controls enough track to cause problems if he aligns with the wrong people. Perhaps a friendly acquisition might be in order." A hostile takeover, you mean? I prefer to think of it as aggressive negotiation, Carnegie replies, with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. And there it is. The cutthroat reality of Gilded Age business. These men, sitting with you eating caviar in a private railcar worth millions, are casually discussing destroying another tycoon's business empire over breakfast. Not for any greater economic good, but simply because they can. We could approach from different angles, you suggest, trying to sound like the titan of industry you apparently are. Morgan provides the financing pressure. I control enough connecting lines to isolate his key routes. And Carnegie, you trail off, not sure what a steel magnate brings to a railroad takeover. My friendship with several newspaper publishers could ensure public opinion turns against him, Carnegie fills in smoothly. And I do have the ear of certain influential congressmen. In other words, a coordinated attack, financial, operational and political, designed to bring another wealthy man to his knees. The business equivalent of medieval warfare. Morgan nods appreciatively. That's why I wanted this meeting. Three-pronged approach. Huntington won't know what hit him until it's too late. The porter appears with fresh coffee. Gentlemen, we'll be arriving at Garrison in approximately 30 minutes. Just enough time to finalize the details, Morgan says, pulling out a leather portfolio filled with papers. I've had my men draw up the preliminary agreements. As Morgan and Carnegie dive into the legal minutiae of your conspiracy, your business arrangement, you gaze out the window at the passing Hudson Valley. The autumn colors are stunning, but you see it differently now. Those pristine forests are owned by timber companies that will clear-cut them without a second thought. That beautiful river is increasingly polluted by the factories sprouting along its banks. The picturesque small towns are filled with people working 12-hour days, 6 days a week, many of them children as young as 10. Everything is a commodity. Vanderbilt Hughes, Morgan's sharp voice cuts through your thoughts. Are you listening? This paragraph concerns your liability. You turn back to the table, to these powerful men and their schemes. Yes, of course. As you bend over the contracts that will further consolidate your control over the nation's vital infrastructure, a realization dawns. This is what being a billionaire means in the Gilded Age. Not just luxury and privilege, but power. The power to shape industries, to move markets, to decide the fates of thousands of workers. And with that power comes the moral weight of how you use it. These men view workers as replaceable parts. They view regulations as inconveniences to be circumvented. Is that who you are in this world? As the train glides smoothly toward Garrison, you face the uncomfortable truth that in the Gilded Age, there is no clean money. The entire system is built on the exploitation of workers and natural resources. To be at the top of this system means having blood on your hands. One last thing, Carnegie says, as he signs the final document. My wife is hosting a little gathering at our place in New York next week. She specifically asked that you and Mrs. Vanderbilt Hughes attend. Apparently your wife made quite an impression at the Vanderbilt ball last month. You have a wife? We wouldn't miss it, you say, wondering what kind of person would marry the ruthless robber baron you apparently are. The train comes to a halt, and the porter appears to assist with your departure. You take one last look around the opulent private car. You've just participated in a conspiracy to manipulate national transportation prices and destroy a business rival. You've learned that you regularly bribe government officials and exploit workers. You've glimpsed the callous disregard for human suffering that characterizes the business leaders of this era, and it's still not even noon. The social labyrinth. After your breakfast conspiracy meeting with Morgan and Carnegie, you find yourself back in your carriage, headed toward Madison Square. The morning's business dealings have left a sour taste in your mouth, but there's no time to dwell on moral quandaries. Your social calendar beckons, and in the Gilded Age, social obligations are just as critical to survival as business ones. Where to, sir? Your driver calls down. You consult the small leather notebook you found in your jacket pocket. Home first, you reply, then to Mrs. Astor's at 3. Mrs. Astor, even with your limited historical knowledge, you recognize that name. Caroline Astor, the self-appointed gatekeeper of New York society. The woman who, along with social arbiter Ward McAllister, created the famous 400, the definitive list of who mattered in New York society. Getting on that list meant you'd arrived. Staying off it meant social death. Your carriage turns onto Fifth Avenue, rejoining the parade of wealth. Ladies in enormous hats stroll with parasols. Gentlemen tip their bowlers. Children in sailor suits are paraded by their nursemaids. It's a carefully orchestrated display of leisure and prosperity. As your carriage approaches your mansion, you notice something you missed this morning. The building itself. 5 stories of limestone and marble, designed in the French Renaissance style. It looks like a cross between a palace and a wedding cake. The butler opens the front door before you reach it. "Welcome home, sir. Madam is in the morning room and asked to see you upon your return." Madam. Your wife definitely has a name, but apparently even the household staff refers to her by her title. The formality of Gilded Age life continues to astound you. You follow him to a sunny room overlooking the garden. There she is, your wife. She sits at a delicate writing desk, penning correspondence. Her morning dress is simple but obviously expensive. Her dark hair is piled intricately on her head. She looks up as you enter, her expression guarded. "You wanted to see me?" you ask, suddenly nervous. "George," she says, using your apparent first name. "I wanted to confirm you'll be accompanying me to Caroline's this afternoon. She was quite pointed in her invitation that both of us should attend." Her tone is formal, but not cold. This seems to be a marriage of business partners rather than passionate lovers, typical for the upper classes of this era. "Of course," you reply. 3 o'clock, correct?" She nods, studying your face with a slight frown. "Are you feeling well? You seem different today." "Just a demanding morning with Morgan and Carnegie," you say, which isn't a lie. Her expression softens slightly. "Those men would try the patience of a saint." A brief, genuine smile crosses her face. "Though I dare say you're their equal in stubbornness." There's almost affection in her voice. Perhaps this marriage isn't as cold as it first appeared. "Will you join me for luncheon?" she asks. "The new chef has prepared a quail salad, and I find I've grown tired of dining alone." The words carry weight. You dine alone often, it seems. "I'd like that," you say, and mean it. Surprise flickers across her face, followed by a more genuine smile. "Wonderful. I'll have Burton set another place." Lunch with your wife turns out to be a surprisingly pleasant affair. Her name, you discover through careful conversation, is Constance. She's intelligent, well-read, and possesses a dry wit. You learn that you have 2 children, a son at boarding school and a daughter in Europe. Their absence seems perfectly normal for your social class. "You're in an unusually good mood," Constance observes as you finish your coffee. "Generally, meetings with your railroad associates leave you positively bearish." You shrug. "Perhaps I'm learning to appreciate the finer things." You gesture to the elegant lunch table, but your eyes stay on her. She actually blushes slightly. "George, really, at our age?" There's a history here you don't know, a relationship with its own patterns and boundaries that you're disrupting, simply by being a bit kinder than usual. It makes you wonder what kind of man you are in this world. "I should dress for Caroline's," Constance says, rising from the table. "It wouldn't do to be late." "Heaven forbid," you say, a touch of sarcasm making her smile again. Constance leaves, and you have some time to yourself. Your private study is a masculine room with leather-bound books, hunting trophies, and a massive desk piled with paperwork. You leaf through some documents. You own land in 27 states. You have controlling interest in 12 different railroad companies. You have investments in steel mills, coal mines, oil fields, and banks. The scale of your wealth is dizzying. One document catches your eye, a letter from your mine superintendent in Pennsylvania. "Regarding your inquiry about safety improvements, I must advise against the expenditure at this time. The mesh screening would cost approximately $1,200 to install. However, it is more economical to simply replace workers as accidents occur." And there at the bottom, in what you recognize as your own handwriting, "Agreed. No action needed." Your stomach turns. You've literally calculated that workers' lives are worth less than basic safety equipment. And the worst part is, this cold calculation is perfectly normal business practice in the Gilded Age. A soft knock interrupts your moral crisis. It's Richardson. "Sir, it's time to dress for Mrs. Astor's reception." The next half hour is consumed with the elaborate ritual of preparing for an afternoon social event. A different suit, a different pocket watch, cufflinks that cost more than most people's homes. By the time you descend the grand staircase, Constance is waiting in the entrance hall. She's transformed herself into a walking display of wealth, a pale blue silk dress with sapphires and diamonds glittering at her throat and ears. "You look beautiful," you say, and mean it. She seems pleased but confused by the compliment. "Thank you, George. Shall we?" The carriage ride to the Astor Mansion on Fifth Avenue is short but significant. You're travelling from the new money section of Fifth Avenue to the old money stronghold. "Remember, George," Constance says quietly, "Caroline was particularly insistent we attend today. I suspect she has something specific in mind." "Any guess what?" you ask. "There's been talk about her son John and our Elizabeth, a potential marriage alliance. You realise your absent daughter is being considered as a match for the Astor heir. Such a union would solidify your family's social position while injecting the Astors with fresh capital. A perfect Gilded Age arrangement." "I see," you say neutrally, wondering how you feel about essentially selling your daughter to raise your social status. The Astor Mansion comes into view, another limestone palace, though more restrained and elegant. A line of carriages disgorge expensively dressed guests. "Do try to be civil to Ward McAllister," Constance murmurs. "I know you find him ridiculous, but he still has Caroline's ear." The reception is in full swing when you enter the drawing room. About 50 people mill about. The room itself is a testament to old money taste. Elegant, but not showy. "Mr. and Mrs. Vanderbilt Hughes," the butler announces, and heads turn. You feel the weight of dozens of gazes. You're being assessed, categorized, judged. Caroline Astor herself approaches, a regal woman in her 60s. "George, Caroline, how good of you to come." "George, I understand you've been expanding your interests in the Western Territories. John was just speaking of it with some gentlemen by the fireplace. Perhaps you'd care to join them." It's not a request. You're being directed to the men's conversation. "Of course," you say, and are guided toward a group of men, including John Jacob Astor, the heir to the family fortune. "Vanderbilt Hughes," Astor greets you with a slight nod. "We were just discussing the troubling situation at the mines. Dreadful business." Your pulse quickens. What troubling situation? The strikes? The callous safety decision you discovered in your study? "Indeed," you say non-committally. "These labour agitators are becoming a genuine concern," says another man. "When workers start believing they deserve more than the market dictates, the entire economic system is threatened." They're waiting for you to agree. This is a test. Do you think like them? "The situation is complex," you say carefully. "Working conditions in many industries are genuinely dangerous. Perhaps addressing some legitimate concerns would reduce the appeal of labour organisers." The men stare at you. "My dear fellow," Astor says with a forced laugh, "you sound positively progressive. Next, you'll be suggesting we invite union representatives to Newport for the summer." The others chuckle. Crisis averted. They've decided you're making an awkward joke. After about an hour of this exhausting social performance, people begin to drift toward the entrance. The reception is ending precisely at 5 o'clock. As you and Constance retrieve your outer garments, Caroline approaches once more. "We're so looking forward to seeing your Newport home completed," she says. "Perhaps you'll host a little gathering there once the season begins." Translation: You've passed the test. You're being invited to host an event that Caroline Astor might actually attend, the ultimate social benediction. "We'd be delighted," Constance replies, a hint of genuine pleasure breaking through her social mask. "Oh, and do bring Elizabeth." John mentioned how much he enjoyed their conversation at the opera last winter, a clear signal that your daughter is being considered for the ultimate social elevation. In the carriage ride home, Constance practically vibrates with suppressed excitement. "Did you hear? She as good as invited herself to Newport, and the way she mentioned Elizabeth and John. George, do you realise what this means? After all these years." You see it clearly now, the driving force behind your wife's life, behind your entire marriage. Social acceptance, the desperate need to be recognised as equals by people whose only claim to superiority is having gotten rich earlier. It seems so petty compared to the life and death concerns of the workers in your factories. You don't seem as pleased as I expected, she says. I was just thinking about the cost, you reply truthfully. She misunderstands. The Newport house? I know it's been dreadfully expensive, but surely it's worth it for what it will mean for Elizabeth's future. An Astor match. Even your father couldn't have dreamed so high. The real cost, you think, is much higher than dollars. It's the crushing of workers' lives to build fortunes. It's the reduction of your daughter to a commercial transaction. But, in the gathering dusk of Fifth Avenue, you keep these thoughts to yourself. The true cost. Dinner at Delmonico's with the governor turns out to be exactly what you'd expect. An elaborate dance of influence, money, and power, thinly disguised as a social occasion. The restaurant is a temple to excess, where the elite of New York dine to be seen. Vanderbilt Hughes and the lovely Mrs. Vanderbilt Hughes. Governor Flower greets you with practiced warmth. Delighted, absolutely delighted. Around a private table in the back room you meet your dinner companions. 2 state senators, a judge, and several businessmen who are clearly lobbyists. As the turtle soup is served, you realize the true purpose of this dinner. A proposed bill affecting railroad taxation is coming up, and these men want to ensure it dies a quiet death. The problem, you see, one of the senators says, is that the public has gotten this absurd notion that railroads should pay their fair share. Complete nonsense, the judge agrees. The governor turns to you. Your thoughts, Vanderbilt Hughes, you have more track laid in this state than almost anyone. This is clearly a moment where your Gilded Age self would be expected to voice strong opinions. I believe, you begin carefully, that we must balance the legitimate needs of business with the long-term stability of the state. Prosperity depends on both. The men stare at you blankly. That was apparently not the fire-breathing defense of corporate interests they expected. Well said, the governor recovers. Balance, indeed. That's precisely why I'm considering a compromise bill. One that appears to increase taxation while providing generous exemptions for essential infrastructure investments. In other words, a bill designed to look like reform while actually preserving the status quo. Classic Gilded Age politics. I'd be happy to have my secretary draft some, suggested language for such exemptions you offer, getting the hang of this game. Excellent. Your expertise would be most valuable. As dinner progresses through 7 more courses, you participate in what amounts to a conspiracy to defraud the public. The corruption is wrapped in layers of respectability. By the time dessert arrives, a towering confection of ice cream, spun sugar, and gold leaf, you've witnessed more corruption in one meal than most people see in a lifetime. And the most disturbing part? Everyone at the table, including your Gilded Age self, considers this perfectly normal. The evening ends around 10 o'clock. As you and Constance settle into your carriage, she looks pleased. That went well. The governor's wife invited us to their summer place in the Adirondacks. She rarely extends such invitations. Another social victory. Back at your mansion, Richardson is waiting to help you change for the night. He coughs discreetly. Sir, there was a telegram while you were out, from Newport. He hands you a yellow piece of paper. The message is brief. Construction completed, furniture installed, staff hired, ready for inspection. Your Newport summer palace is apparently finished. Also, sir, Richardson continues, your private car has been prepared for tomorrow's journey as requested. You hadn't known you were leaving tomorrow, but apparently your Gilded Age self had already made plans to visit Newport. What time do we depart? 9 a.m., sir. Mrs. Vanderbilt Hughes has chosen to remain in the city. That simplifies things. You won't have to maintain your charade in front of Constance. Oh, very good. Good night, Richardson. Left alone, you find sleep elusive. The day's events, the business conspiracy, the social manoeuvring, the political corruption swirl in your mind. Is this what it means to be wealthy in the Gilded Age? Is this success? You drift off eventually, but your dreams are troubled by images of workers trapped in burning factories. The Summer Palace. Morning comes too soon. You're woken again by Richardson and his team of servants. By 8:30, you're in your carriage headed for Grand Central Depot. Your private rail car awaits, configured differently for business travel. As the train pulls out of the station, you settle into a leather armchair and examine the morning papers. The headlines are a window into the Gilded Age. Steel strike continues. Violence reported. Tenement fire kills 23 in Lower East Side. Mrs. Astor's reception draws society elite. That last one catches your eye. You scan the article and find your name listed among the attendees, with speculation about a possible match between the Astor and Vanderbilt Hughes families. Society gossip, it seems, is serious news in the Gilded Age. The porter appears with breakfast, eggs, steak, fresh fruit, and a glass of champagne. Apparently, morning drinking is still very much a thing for the upper classes. The journey passes in a blur of paperwork you mostly pretend to read, and elaborate meals. By mid-afternoon, your train is pulling into Newport, Rhode Island, summer playground of America's elite. Your carriage waits at the station. "To Breakwater Hall, sir?" the driver asks. You nod, assuming that must be the name of your Newport estate. As the carriage rolls through Newport, you get your first glimpse of the famous resort town in winter. The carriage turns onto Bellevue Avenue, the most prestigious address, and there, rising on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, is your summer home. "Holy sh!" you mutter. "Magnificent, isn't it, sir?" the driver says proudly. "Finest house on the avenue, they're saying." Breakwater Hall is not a house. It's a limestone chateau that would make French aristocrats jealous. 5 stories of pale stone with turrets and balconies. The thing is a statement, a declaration that you have so much money, you can build a palace you'll use 8 weeks a year and leave empty the rest of the time. As your carriage approaches, you notice a small army of servants lined up on the front steps, at least 30 people in formal uniform, standing at attention in the February cold, waiting to greet their master. A man in his 50s, dressed in immaculate black, steps forward. "Welcome to Breakwater Hall, sir. I am Harrove, your butler." Of course he's English. "Thank you, Harrove," you reply, stepping down. The butler gestures to the assembled staff. "The household staff is assembled for your inspection, sir. 38 in total, not including the groundskeepers and stable hands." 38 people to maintain a house you'll barely use. The waste is staggering. Harrove leads you on a tour. Breakwater Hall has 97 rooms. There are 30 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom. Unheard of luxury in 1895. There are drawing rooms, music rooms, a library, a conservatory, and a ballroom that could host 200 people comfortably. Every room is furnished in a different historical style. The previous record for construction was 2 years. Held by the Vanderbilt cottage, Harrove informs you. Breakwater Hall was completed in 18 months, at your insistence. Rush building a palace to one-up the Vanderbilts. The competitiveness of the Gilded Age elite knows no bounds. The tour continues to the servants' quarters, where the luxury abruptly ends. The rooms are small, plain, and functional. The contrast with a family's accommodations is stark. By the time you reach the basement to inspect the coal furnaces and electric generators, your head is spinning with the scale of excess. "Is everything satisfactory, sir?" Harrove asks. You nod, unable to find words that won't betray your shock. This isn't a home. It's a monument to ego and competitive consumption. Left alone with your tea, you have a moment to absorb the absurdity. You're the sole occupant of a 97-room palace with a staff of 40 people whose only purpose is to serve you. The waste of resources is almost physically painful to contemplate. But this is success in the Gilded Age. A footman enters with a silver tray bearing a telegram. The yellow paper bears a brief message: "Trouble at Pittsburgh Mill. Workers threatening general strike. Pinkerton agents standing by. Await your orders. More labor unrest. More desperate workers demanding basic rights. More private police ready to crack skulls in defense of your profits." This is the dark side of Gilded Age success. Every crystal chandelier in Breakwater Hall was paid for by the sweat and blood of workers. You crumple the telegram, unsure how to respond. Your modern sensibilities recoil at the thought of setting armed thugs on striking workers. But in this world, in this role, what are your alternatives? As the winter sun sets over the Atlantic, you face the fundamental moral question of the Gilded Age. Is any of this worth the human cost? A House of Lies. Dinner at Breakwater Hall is another elaborate ritual, a 7-course meal prepared by 6 people, served by 4, for you alone at a table that seats 24. The absurdity would be comical if it weren't so obscene. The next morning brings a new level of absurdity. You wake to find not 1, but 3 valets waiting to assist you. The bathing and dressing rituals are performed with ceremonial precision, ending with a diamond stick pin on your white tie. By the time you descend for breakfast, you are a perfect image of Gilded Age success, but inside you're increasingly troubled by the moral cost. Breakfast is served in a glass-walled conservatory. The February sun sparkles on waves crashing against the cliffs. Inside, surrounded by exotic plants shipped from warmer climates, you dine on food imported from across the country. A footman appears with a silver tray bearing a telegram. Trouble at Pittsburgh Mill, workers threatening general strike. Pinkerton agents standing by, await your orders. This is the dark side of Gilded Age success. Every crystal chandelier in Breakwater Hall was paid for by the sweat and blood of workers. You crumple the telegram, unsure how to respond. Later you realize you've planned a dinner party for that evening, a gathering of 8 local residents, complete with a string quartet and an ice sculpture of Neptune. 12 courses, stuffed peacock, and the finest wine, all to entertain people you don't even know. The evening is a performance. The guests ooh and ah over the house, the furnishings, the artwork. Their compliments are genuine, but also calculating. They're mentally tallying the cost of everything, determining your exact place in the social hierarchy. The conversation is a bizarre mix of flattery and subtle digs at other absent members of society. Not once do they mention business, politics, or social issues. It's as if the world outside Newport doesn't exist. By the time the last guest has departed, you're exhausted. You stand in the entrance hall as Harov closes the massive front door. A successful evening, sir. The guests were most impressed. Is this what we do, Harov, you ask? Spend fortunes to impress people we don't even particularly like? The butler's face remains professionally neutral, but his eyes register surprise at this philosophical turn. I couldn't say, sir. I'm merely here to ensure it's done properly. You climb the grand staircase alone, passing priceless artwork that no one really sees. You're starting to understand that the true currency of the Gilded Age isn't just money, it's social position, influence and power. As you prepare for bed, you wonder if anyone in this glittering world is truly happy, or if they're all just trapped in golden cages of their own making. A moral crossroads. Dinner at Delmonico's with the governor and his circle is an elaborate performance of political corruption. It's not about crude bribes, but subtle agreements wrapped in layers of respectability. You help craft a bill that appears to help the public, but will ultimately serve your business interests. The casual, accepted nature of the corruption is the most disturbing part. The next morning, back in New York, a telegram arrives from your Pittsburgh mill. Situation at mill critical. Violence reported. The labor unrest has escalated. As you hurriedly dress for the journey, Richardson tells you what he's learned from the papers. The Pinkertons opened fire on striking workers. 3 are dead. You make a decision. You may be trapped in this Gilded Age life, but you don't have to perpetuate its worst aspects. You decide to go to Pittsburgh yourself, to face the consequences of the system you've inhabited. Your carriage speeds toward Grand Central. You've drafted a new policy for the mill. Shorter hours, slightly higher wages, and basic safety equipment. It's modest by modern standards, but revolutionary for 1895. Your secretary nearly fainted when you dictated it. Now, as your train speeds through the darkness toward Pittsburgh, you stand at the window. The luxury of your surroundings feels grotesque against the backdrop of dead workers and broken families. You are not a human to them, but a symbol of oppression. As midnight approaches, you prepare for bed. Richardson, you say, have you ever considered what it must be like to work in one of my factories? He blinks, genuinely startled. I cannot say I have, sir. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, no safety measures. Children working alongside dangerous machinery for wages that barely cover food and shelter. Richardson's face remains professionally blank, but his eyes betray discomfort. I imagine it must be challenging, sir. Challenging, you repeat. Yes, I suppose that's one word for it. An awkward silence falls between you. Will you be requiring the sleeping draught tonight, sir? Richardson finally asks. Number, I think I need a clear head for tomorrow. When he's gone, you lie in your berth, feeling the rhythm of the train. The gentle rocking should be soothing, but sleep remains elusive. You think about the workers who will greet your arrival not with bows, but with anger. You think about how your beautiful mansions, your private rail car, your army of servants are all built on the bent backs of these workers. As the train speeds through the darkness of rural Pennsylvania, you wonder what will happen when you reach Pittsburgh. Will your modest reforms be enough, or have things gone too far? And what if you wake up tomorrow, back in your own time? Will the real Vanderbilt Hughes return to his body, tear up your reforms and unleash more violence on his workers? Is anything you're doing making any real difference? You think about the contrast you've witnessed in just a few days as a Gilded Age billionaire. The 97-room cottage in Newport and the tenements of New York, the 12-course dinners and the workers who can barely afford bread. America in 1895 is truly two different worlds, and you've had the rare burden of seeing both. As exhaustion finally overtakes you, you drift towards sleep with one final thought. Whatever happens in Pittsburgh, you'll never see wealth the same way again. The true cost of extreme inequality has been written on your soul. The train whistle sounds, signaling the approach to Pittsburgh Station. In a few hours you'll face the consequences of a system you didn't create but have briefly inhabited. You'll look into the eyes of people whose lives have been shaped, and sometimes destroyed, by the pursuit of profit above all else. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find a way to bring a small measure of justice to this gilded world of extremes. The train rounds a bend. The lights of Pittsburgh are glowing stronger now. Tomorrow will bring confrontation, perhaps danger, and certainly difficult choices. But for now, sleep comes at last, deep and dreamless. Your last thought before darkness claims you is simple but profound. In any era, in any economic system, the measure of a society isn't how it treats its most privileged members, but how it cares for its most vulnerable. And by that measure, the Gilded Age, for all its mansions and technological marvels, has failed dramatically.